I'm going to call this meeting of the Little Compton School Committee Policy Subcommittee to order at 3:30 p.m. If everybody could stand if you are able to pledge our flag in the back of the room here. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind joining me in a moment of reflection.
Could I ask what your position is, sir, Amanda?
I'm the chair of the subcommittee.
Oh, thank you.
Please, a moment of reflection. Thank you. All right. So I'd like to start this meeting just with a brief statement. We have a large group today, and I'd like to just remind everybody that this is a subcommittee of the full committee, so no action is taken here. Policies are not voted and approved on in this body. They are voted and approved on after 2 readings at the full committee meeting. Subcommittee's purpose, or school committee's purpose really is to make policy and to vote and approve on the budget. So this is one of the most important subcommittees we have, but again, no policy can be approved and passed without the full 5-member committee having gone over it, discussed it at 2 monthly meetings. So this is purely informational. This is where we review and revise things, we discuss. Sometimes we discuss policies here, the idea of policies here, and they never get sent to the full committee because we decide as a subcommittee that it's either redundant, unnecessary, whatever the case may be. So sometimes you'll see policies on our agenda and you'll never see them on a full committee agenda because we've decided to kind of axe it at this level, okay? I think there was some miscommunication about last month's meeting. We had a group come that didn't seem to have that correct kind of flow of policy approval, so I just wanted to make sure everybody understands we're not here to approve or deny any policy today. It's purely discussion and information. With that being said, I'm going to start off on discussion item 2.1, the gender identity and expression non-discrimination policy. This was requested that we discuss at this meeting by a member of the public, so we are happy to put that on the agenda and discuss. This policy was originally adopted in 2018 because it is Rhode Island law that we have a policy on the books that we do not discriminate against any person, any class of person, and this is one of those policies that aligns us with Rhode Island statute. Purely to say that we do not discriminate against people, whether they are employees, students, contractors, regardless of race, national origin, sex, genetic information, gender identification or expression, religion, disability, age, sexual orientation, marital status, or veteran status. This policy aligns perfectly, not only because it's required by law, again, this is required by law that we have this on the books, but it also aligns with our mission here at Little Compton Public Schools, where we truly believe that there's valuable diversity that exists among our community, and it's integral to our vision and our mission and our goals that we foster an educational environment that is safe and free from discrimination for all students, all employees, anybody who comes through our doors. So this policy is specific to those who have different gender identities and expressions, but it is also protecting those who might identify as cisgender or heterosexual. And if you can scroll down to the second page, there was a specific question, I believe, about restrooms and locker rooms. And this policy, as it is already written, protects both the transgender student or employee and also the cisgendered student or employee who might feel comfortable with someone who doesn't identify similarly to them. So I'll read from the second paragraph under restrooms, locker rooms, and canteen facilities. Some individuals may feel uncomfortable with transgender individual or gender non-conforming individuals using the same gender-segregated restroom, locker room, or changing facility. This discomfort is not a reason to deny access to the transgender individual or gender non-conforming individual. The individual, that is, the person who's uncomfortable with transgender individuals.
Excuse me, can I interrupt you?
I'm sorry, public comment.
There's a whole bunch of people in the hallway that really want to be in here. Can we move the venue to a larger room?
You might have to.
You want to move, or do you want to try to scooch everything this way?
Can I jump in?
I don't want to get
Yes,
backed into this space anymore.
We might have to move, Sean, we have an overflow.
Yeah, if you have an overflow problem and there's members of the public trying to get into the meeting and they can't currently, my advice is to at least recess the meeting to assess whether or not you can move into a larger room to accommodate everyone. If you can, do that, and then you can bring your meeting back into session. If for some reason you cannot, you might need to adjourn the meeting and have it at a later date where you can accommodate members of the public.
Let me run up to the library and see what time the children, okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, they should be.
Okay, we're gonna recess for 5 minutes to figure out a secondary location. Just please remain seated and we'll let you know where the next location will be.
It'll likely be in the library, but Wednesdays is when our students can access the library after school hours, for research and recreational reading, etc. So let me see when they usually clear it out. Generally, it's early.
4 o'clock.
4? So we may be able to scooch into that.
Cafeteria is available if you want to set up on that.
Let's do that because I think we have a pretty hard stop at 4:30.
Yeah.
Did you say cafeteria?
Cafeteria is good, we can move
We're
it.
gonna have to bring it up for anything.
Figure something out very quickly.
Thank
We
you.
are gonna reconvene this meeting at 3:45 p.m. Thank you all for your patience and understanding as we've had to move locations for our amazing turnout here. I'm gonna stand, I'm kind of uncomfortable in this cafeteria seat. I'm gonna stand. Yeah, so I'm just gonna kind of review what I had said for those of you who weren't in the room at the time. So this again is the policy subcommittee of the full Little Compton School Committee. We do not pass policy here. That happens at full committee after 2 consecutive read-throughs, so that's 2 different months of meetings. This is purely just where we discuss, review, revise, review with our attorney, our experts here, Principal McKinnon, Superintendent Dias-Mitchell, about what are the best policies that we need to enact for our schools. A lot of the time, I'd say the majority of the time, the policies we are passing, they're regulated by state law. So we have to have these policies on the book.
That's right.
Question?
Yeah. I'll take questions during public comment, thank you. Before the recess, we had started to discuss discussion item 2.1, gender identity and expression non-discrimination policy. I was just reading some of the points from this policy that states that we cannot discriminate against prospective employees, current and prospective employees, students, contractors, regardless of race, national origin, sex, genetic information, gender identification or expression, religion, disability, age, sexual orientation, marital status, or veteran status. And again, this is a policy that is required by state law. But we do feel that it aligns with our mission and our values here at the Little Compton School Department, which we believe it's the purpose to foster an educational environment that is safe and free from discrimination for all. And that does include those who are maybe uncomfortable with different gender identities and expressions or sexualities that are different from their own. So if we can scroll back up to where we were under restrooms, locker rooms, and changing facilities. I just wanted to point out, because there was a question about access to locker rooms that was brought up at last month's full committee meeting. And it is written in this policy that some individuals may feel uncomfortable with transgender individuals or gender non-conforming individuals using the same gender segregated restroom, locker room, or changing facility. This discomfort is not a reason to deny access to the transgender individual or gender nonconforming individual. And the individual who is uncomfortable will also be provided with a safe and adequate alternative for restroom, locker room, and changing facilities. So we believe that this policy protects not only the transgender or otherwise gender nonconforming student, employee, contractor, but also cisgender students, employees, who may not feel as comfortable with people who identify differently than them. And that's all in the spirit of creating an inclusive and diverse environment for our students, because we do know that students thrive when they're in a safe and inclusive space, and that's what we try to do here at Little Compton School Department. Are there any comments from committee members or?
Yeah, I just want to point out that virtually all of the policies that are in the Little Compton School Department School Committee canon always reference case law, federal law, statute law, the Department of Ed policies that are relevant, different federal bureaus and entities, their policies and directives are also referenced. So nothing is ever generated in a vacuum. And we're very proud of this policy, and we're happy that it is up for discussion and that we can sort of demystify its components. It's all about safety.
Definitely. So thank you, Superintendent Dias-Mitchell. Again, we're going to be taking public comment in the public comment section of this agenda, which is further down. I would just like to say as well that this policy, again, is not up for review at this time. It was requested to be discussed by a member of the public. So this policy will not be on a full committee agenda. This is just a discussion happening here amongst the subcommittee. It was adopted June 20th, 2018, last revised May 12th, 2021, where it passed with a majority vote on the full school committee. So with no other comments and questions from the committee, I will move to 2.2 field trip policy.
Okay, was Principal McKinnon? Okay, oh gosh. I guess I am definitely farsighted. Anyway, could you give a little bit of background regarding that policy being on the agenda?
So what has happened in the past is, it's a field trip permission slip. Obviously, the first permission slip needs to go through.
I get really hurt here. Could you stand, please?
Sure. The first field trip has to go to, if it's an out-of-state field trip, needs to go in front of the school committee for permission to go out of state for an overnight field trip. Our field trip overnights, we have a Washington, D.C. with our 8th graders. And we also have a field trip to Buck Hill, which is coming up in 2 weeks, which is located in Rhode Island, in Bolivar. But getting the permission slip approved for any overnights goes through the school committee. Any field trip that is a day trip goes basically through myself and our superintendent of schools. But just making sure that these field trips, it's one field trip form and not forms that are built by any particular teacher.
We found that there were several field trip forms floating around. Certain teachers were using the same one, and truly, not by design, but by accident, for years and years, and it hadn't been updated. And some of these field trip forms had some outdated language, like you must get permission from your mother and father, and that's language that is not inclusive. And so we definitely want to circle back and look at these attachments, field trip policy, the request form, student information and permission form from parent or guardian, and just update the language so that it is in sync with the mission of the Little Compton School. A lot of different variations of the field trip permission slip floating around, so we want to tighten that up. And that's it. It's really not up for
So-
editing or anything yet, just discussion.
Thank you. No, I like it. All right, that looks good to me. We can move that to the full agenda for the full committee. And move to 2.3, suicide prevention policy and protocol. So this one we did review at a full committee meeting, and we decided we'd like to bring it back to the policy subcommittee for some language tweaks. If you don't mind updating us on that, Superintendent Dyson?
Attorney Papa, as you can see me. Hello. So we did have a stakeholder at the last school committee meeting who brought up some really good points, and it compelled the subcommittee chair, Hannah Ayotte, and the vice chair, Megan Gonzalez, to bring it up at this policy meeting and look at those suggestions. And I do believe they are right there. The stakeholder was concerned about this particular word in bold. The stakeholder is a clinician, and I'm not sure if the stakeholder was here. The stakeholder was here. And so if we hear any sort of feedback that we feel is actionable, this committee always takes it up. It is the busiest committee in the history of this district, I assure you. And so we looked at that, the May, and kind of anytime we don't know which direction to go in, we call legal, and that is Attorney Sean Clough. And so I'm going to hand this over to you, Sean, regarding both pieces, this bullet and also the other bullet that you and I were concerned about as well.
Hang on one second, Sean. We're trying to make it
Sean.
a little bit louder.
Just next part.
There we go. There it is.
Is that better?
Much better, Sean.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, all right, thank you. So once that comment by the one member of the public was brought to our attention, my office did do some additional investigation into when clinicians should have discretion in regards to confronting some very challenging issues around students who are experiencing suicidal ideation. And when discussions that I had with the Rhode Island Department of Ed, the guidance that the Rhode Island Department of Ed issues is silent on the matter of informing parents or guardians, as well as making immediate referrals to the family physician or mental health agency. And where that comes from is allowing discretion, because we can't anticipate in any given policy what circumstances a clinician or any other medical professional may be approaching and handling, particularly with such a sensitive issue as dealing with suicide. In an overwhelming majority of cases, we would expect a clinician in a school department to work with the student and the student's family when there is the matter of suicide at hand. However, there are very rare cases where unfortunately there is something ongoing, particularly at the home, where informing the parent or guardian, or even making an immediate referral to the family physician or mental health agency, may not be something that the clinician does immediately. So I think we want to look at this language from a legal perspective and put into this language not full discretion, but when the clinician understands that disclosure to either a parent or guardian or a referral may actually harm the child rather than help, they will work with the school and contact DCYF prior to any disclosure, and the school department can assess when that disclosure would occur. But I want to stress to the members of the committee that this would be in extremely rare circumstances. The default is obviously always involving parents or guardians with something of this nature. But in the rare circumstance where disclosure could result in further harm to a student, the clinician, in their good faith judgment, will make the call as to whether or not that disclosure needs to occur in that moment. And the superintendent can set up additional protocols that can reassess that judgment on a day-to-day basis. So it could be that something changes and we are informing parents. It could be something that changes and we are making immediate referrals to family physician or mental health agency. But again, I want to just trickle down to make sure it's very clear that this is not a blanket rule one way or the other. It's if we have a situation where informing the individuals at home could cause more harm, then we would exercise our discretion prior to disclosure. Does that make sense?
So you would suggest changing some of this language?
So yeah,
Okay.
we're battling.
We're punting here. So Attorney Clough, you would suggest changing some of this language?
Attorney Clough, we're changing language to identify the discretion that a healthcare physician can take in the situation at hand. Okay. So with
Vanessa?
yes, Megan, how do you feel about those changes? Or
No, I agree.
Yeah.
That's important.
okay. So based on the language that Sean comes up with, we will have that new draft available at the full committee meeting in a couple weeks to review and discuss.
And thank you to the stakeholder for
Yes.
bringing some of the language to our attention. That particular piece will not change likely. That is what Sean did receive that information from the Department of Ed today. But there were other pieces that Attorney Clough and I looked at and felt, okay, these need attention. And so anytime you start looking at one policy or one area, there's always more. Constantly looking to improve and reaching out to experts in the field to assist us in that. So
Great. Thank you so much for your work on that, and thank you to the member of the public who brought that to our attention. 2.4 crisis response policy, that is just on there simply because we pulled the suicide prevention policy out of the crisis response policy. So at one point, they were all in one policy. Now they are two separate policies per state of Rhode Island law. So we'll move to 2.5, library policy. This is your expertise, Superintendent Mitchell.
that would deal with my experience in schools and in higher ed and libraries. So this is my daily work, definitely. So our library policy had not been updated since, I believe, 2014. And it lacked an area that delineates what a stakeholder would do if he, she, or they have a complaint about materials in the library, or it could be instructional materials in a classroom, or materials anywhere within the school. And so, and it also had a request for reconsideration of library materials. Scroll down to that. So there was a form for a complainant to complete, but there wasn't a reference within the body of the policy. And so we have an incomplete policy for every stakeholder when there's integral information that's missing. And so it wasn't a bad reconsideration of library materials form, but it certainly wasn't connected to the policy in any way. And so I started cobbling together a new draft library policy, so go to the copy. And it's basically all of the content, the only, so that is the draft. And if you scroll down, it now has a procedures for handling formal complaints. That was missing from the previous policy. And within this step-by-step procedure is a reference to an updated reconsideration of instructional materials form. And so in my career as a librarian and a library director and as an administrator, I have chaired reconsideration of materials committees. And we have gone through the process that a complainant has brought to us. And so there were no procedures. I think this might have been the only district in the state without procedures outlined. And so now there are procedures that the full committee will look at. I still have to suss them out a bit, maybe one more policy committee meeting. If you scroll down, if there's a book or a website or any instructional resource that you have a concern about, here are the steps. And then there's a timeline. Within 10 days, you must do this. Within 3 days, the administration must do that. And so it really empowers all stakeholders in any issue around instructional materials. And the procedure is it first starts with an informal, an informal conversation, perhaps between the principal and the complainant, the parent, the stakeholder. And if that doesn't ameliorate the situation, the complainant can complete the form, and a committee is created. A reconsideration of materials committee is created. That committee goes through the process of looking at the complaint and ruling on it. If the complainant is not happy with that outcome, then that goes to a district level reconsideration of instructional materials committee. And this is the case in every single district throughout the country. Our policy just hadn't been updated. And if the complainant is not happy with the district level reconsideration of materials committee, the complaint then goes to the school committee. And then after that, it would go probably, hopefully not, to the courts. And that has yet to happen in my experience on the committees that I've chaired and on the committees I've sat on. There's always been a resolution of some sort, but never has the material been removed, even during the reconsideration process. I want you to know that the procedure here is straight from the American Library Association and the American Association of School Librarians, which really is the arbiter of how school libraries operate throughout this country. And each state has an affiliate organization. It's the Rhode Island Library Association in Rhode Island. And so these are sort of boilerplate procedures, boilerplate forms. But it was high time that it was updated. So it's been 9 years since the last update. And that's it. So it's in draft form. It's straight from AASL, ALA, and RILA, and the request for reconsideration of materials is also, scroll down a bit. It's now referenced in the draft policy, and it is a form straight from, once again, the American Library Association and the American Association of School Libraries. So, yeah, we finally have a complete policy. It was half-baked, how's that? And now it's fully baked. And all interests are delineated and equitably sussed out. So,
And this is something you'd like to review again at a subcommittee meeting before we send it up to the
yes,
full?
the
Okay.
boilerplate language says school board rather than school committee.
Yeah. Just have to go through
Most districts are bigger than ours, our little village school. And so there's a district library coordinator, so some of that language is in there, I haven't, had a chance to pull it all out.
those. Okay. Do you have any comments on library policy? I don't. Okay, so we will see this one again in our next policy subcommittee, just to check all those
Localize it.
little, pieces of language are localized there. So we move to agenda item 3.1, public input on agenda items and topics for future agendas. We do have a large group here today, so I'm going to ask that Mr. Gabriel time everybody for 3 minutes, so everybody gets a 3-minute statement. Please give your name and your address. And sure, name and address, sir.
Sal Marinosi, 24-hour Berlin. You can tell I probably don't have children in school. Not that I don't intend to. Anyways, you mentioned a couple of things. The first thing is that you described what your mission is. And your mission also includes making a recommendation to the school board, correct?
Yes.
Okay, you didn't mention that. So, and another small caveat is that you talked about mother and father in the description
Yes.
to parents. When you make an application for a federal paper, they want to know who your mother was and her maiden name, and who your father was and his family name. They don't say what were your parents' names. They ask for mother and father. And that's when you apply for a passport. I have high security clearances, and they ask my mother's maiden name many, many times. I don't know why we differ from that.
I think I can answer that question. So, mother and father, we want to move away from that, and many school districts,
Excuse me, who's we?
this district, to be inclusive, we would like
You
to,
mean this board?
the school district that myself and Megan represent as elected members of the Little Compton School Committee, we represent the constituents, and our first duty is first and foremost in our bylaws to represent and protect the students of the school. So that is our first priority. And part of that priority is to make sure that our school is a safe and inclusive place. And while a lot of the forms students will get sent home aren't as important as a federal security clearance, we're talking about field trip forms here and things. Sometimes when students have different looking families than just mother, father, there's divorce, there's adoptions, fostering, there's children that get raised by their grandparents. Sometimes seeing that language, mother and father, can be triggering to that child who doesn't live with their mother and father. And while that information is still, I'm speaking, please let me
I can
finish.
tell you.
Please let me finish my statement. And while that mother and father, to most of us who have grown up with our mother and father, it seems normal. To other kids who aren't, it might be a trigger for them, and we want to make sure that this is a safe and inclusive environment again. And that's just one way we can do it. We're not by any means saying anything against mothers and fathers. We just want to encapsulate all different kinds of family makeups, because there are many different kinds of family makeups in our community here. I hope that answers your question.
You can just add another box for
That kind of creates some stigma.
other or
That
guardian.
does create some stigma, because when you do other or a different section, you're making it seem like mother and father is the default. And mother-father isn't the default in 2023. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Other public comments? Yes, your name and your address, please.
Sure, Karen Boschman, Alderman Little Compton. So can you clarify on the policy for the locker room? Are you saying that if there is a transgender child who wants to go, like say a boy who wants to go into the girls' room, are they allowed then to go into the girls' room?
They are going to, there is a whole kind of situation that we're going through where we're convening with, our mental health department in the school, with admin, with teachers, with the parent or guardian of the student to see where that student will feel most comfortable. Sometimes a transgender girl does not feel comfortable in a girl's locker room, and that student will be allowed access to a gender non-conforming separate restroom. And the opposite of that is true. If a cisgender student is uncomfortable with a transgender student being in their locker room or in that room, the restroom, they, along with their parents, guardians, school counselors as well, can make a decision about where the most comfortable spot for that student is. So the policy is really designed to protect everybody involved.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, then if there is a transgender boy who wants to go into the girls' locker, he is permitted, even if all the girls do not feel safe?
She would be permitted based on the whole situation, and I can't speak to a specific situation because every single child is different and every single child has a different level of comfortability. My hope would be that this school is creating a safe enough environment where that child would feel comfortable to be among their peers in that setting, but sometimes that doesn't happen and we have to create other settings for children. So it is more of a conversation than, it's not just a transgender girl is one day walking into the girls' locker room. It's more of a conversation, a discussion amongst, again, parents and guardians, school counselors, and other important individuals.
Because I love that you're into diversity and I love that you're safe. And for girls to have boys come in who've been identified, it is not a safe environment for the girls. It's just not. They're modest at that time. And even though he wants to identify as a girl, he still has a penis.
And I'm going to stop you right there because that is just very,
We're borderline hate speech, so
Yes.
that is not hate speech. Sean, can you please direct a conversation?
excuse me, I'm the chair of this committee and I will have order. Your comment is out of line. You are using incorrect terminology and I would appreciate it for the students especially that are here today, that we try to keep the conversation a little more civil, and I appreciate your comments and your concern. And again, I believe that this policy does outline safe and equitable access for all students, whether you are transgender or transphobic.
Well, there's a new study out.
I believe that your 3 minutes is up.
Well, no, because you spoke the most. So I understand.
I'll take the next public comment, please.
There is a new study that came out.
I am the chair of this committee, please, and I am going to say who speaks. Thank you, Ms. Boschman, for your comment. I'm going to hear from another member of the public.
But you did not give me my 3 minutes. I want that to be noted.
My name is Elaine, I live at 19 Menard Lane, and I was on the school committee for 6 years, and I'm happy to be here and happy to see that the school is making efforts to address these complex, modern issues, or I shouldn't say issues, but realities that are before us. And I read the gender equity, identification policy, and I was pleased with it. I thought, well, this is great. The school is stating that it will not discriminate against people. So that's one thing I want to say. And then the other thing I'd like to say is, I'm a professional meeting facilitator, and I would make a suggestion that at meetings where the issues may become contentious, that ground rules are set. Not only 3 minutes, but that there are no interruptions, and also that people speak respectfully with no insults and name calling and no raised voices. And that might help everybody in the room really feel comfortable and keep the conversation from escalating. So I'd be happy to suggest those ground rules so you can consider them, because I use them all the time in meetings when the issues can be contentious. But I thank you for your work in trying to keep kids safe and include, and that's it. Because it is definitely a complex thing, especially for people who are older and have not haven't had classmates that identify publicly the way kids will identify today, and hopefully safely identify.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, state your name and address, please.
My name is Cheyenne Leon. I am an 8th grade student at this school, and I live at 24 Indian Path, Little Compton, Rhode Island. I would like to ask a very simple question. Why are you feeding into this delusion that boys can be girls and girls can be boys at this school where we are just supposed to be here to teach? I'm here to learn.
Thank you for your question. Thank you for your question, and I really applaud your bravery getting up in front of a group like this. It's for an 8th grader to come speak to a public body, it does take a lot of bravery. So this policy that we're discussing specifically is required by state law, and it says that we can't discriminate against people based on how they identify. This policy does not tell you how to identify. It is not forcing anybody to identify in any way. It simply is saying that if you come to this building, a public school that services all children in this town, if you come here and you identify as something other than what is deemed the norm, which is heterosexual or cisgender, if you identify as something else, all this policy is saying is that you are safe here, you are protected here, and we will do what we can to make sure you are not discriminated against. And it also does say, if you are someone who does not believe that other gender expressions are, if you're uncomfortable with them, then it also protects you as well. And it's so that everybody has a safe and inclusive environment to learn. And again, we're not telling students how to identify, it's simply that if you do identify any certain way, you will not be discriminated against here in our building, and you will be in compliance with Rhode Island state law. Thank you for your question.
Okay, but I have one more thing. Is it inclusive to say that anyone who does not believe in these new norms, as she did, I don't remember her name, I apologize, is it inclusive to deem them as transphobic?
If you are afraid of transgender people, I would say you are transphobic. That is, yes, the definition of the term.
You're not afraid. You're not, I'm not afraid. I don't think anything is. You're afraid? So why would we be deemed transphobic?
I would just suggest more education, reading memoirs and books, and hearing from others' perspectives. And that's really all we're trying to say here. And again, this policy is not pushing any beliefs or values on anyone. It's just protecting all humans to feel safe and accepted within their school community, like we want all students to feel when they come to school.
Thank you for your questions.
Carolyn Montgomery, 284 West Bay Road. One question, why was the meeting for 3:30 in the afternoon when many parents are working? If they're working hours, they can't come to this. I was a little upset at that. It doesn't bother me, but I'm thinking of other parents that have to work to raise their family. Why was it at 3:30?
It's scheduled for 3:30 because the members of this, it's the best time for the members of this body to meet.
But-
We also are working. Megan is also a parent and has other commitments outside of school committee. I have a job and a family and other commitments outside of school committee. So this is just the time that worked best for us. And again, these subcommittees are not where decisions are made. So we really don't get a large group like this because that's when we have a more full discussion with more public at the full committee where a vote is going to happen, where you can have all 5 members of the committee hear everyone's opinion before a vote.
Well, it shows to me that maybe we should have had a committee that could be here at a later time where more people have input. But that just a thing that I noticed. But it looks like to me that we're focusing more on the abnormal than we are on the normal. And I could be wrong, and I hope that's not true. we're always saying we're doing this for the abnormal, but what are we doing for the normal? So that's something I want
Sean.
to consider.
Excuse me, attorney? Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry.
All right. I just want to be certain that we are not promoting hate speech in these meetings, and I just want to make sure that you can hear public comment and redirect it if it is getting borderline.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chess, again, I think everyone needs
Can't hear it.
I'm gonna repeat what he says. Go ahead, Sean.
So the other thing I was put up was,
Excuse me, our attorney is just gonna address
One
hate
second,
speech.
finally,
Our attorney is just gonna address hate speech quickly, just so we are all on the same terms about what can and can be said.
Right, I don't know if individuals can hear me, and I don't
You-
know
they can hear you now, yeah.
over anyone, and I apologize for that if I am. Because I can't hear anyone at the moment due to just some technology issues because of the route change. So I apologize for that. In terms of speech, whether it's from the public or from committee members, just to remind everyone, it is a public meeting. Members of the public during public comment have an opportunity for 3 minutes to address their concerns to the policy subcommittee. However, if those comments end up disrupting the meeting, end up to be such a way that they are intimidating individuals or otherwise inappropriate, you will be warned that to please have professionalized comments. And if you can't do that, then the committee may need to adjourn or your time may be cut short. So please just address your comments respectfully to everyone, and the committee can get through each person for their allotted time.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Please continue.
I'm not going to get it. To me, somehow or another, you're bringing it out that you're telling the people, the students in this class, that there are people that are different. And I hope that is not true, because I think that they don't, a normal little 5 or 6, 7 or 8 year old isn't even thinking about that kind of thing. They come to school, they have friends, and that's it. And so somehow it's gotten into the school system that now these abnormal little
Excuse me,
kids.
I would like to warn you that is borderline hate speech, and if we continue to refer to people as normal and abnormal, then we're going to either adjourn or cut your time off.
Yes, thank you.
Then maybe I used the wrong word, but I do hope that I can see that if we have all in one facility, the boy could be a different, the boy can go into the girls' room. I think this is absolutely, it affects the other students. But to put them into a separate one, that even makes it even more obvious of where they stand. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yes.
Name and address, please. 5 Stickleby Road. My question is, you go to the school, so if there is, and you're in 7th grade, 8th grade? So if the majority of the girls in 7th and 8th grade that by that time are developing, if they are in a locker room or a bathroom where it's a bit vulnerable, what, if the majority of them all feel like, we feel very uncomfortable, and possibly she says she doesn't feel unsafe, but if some do, where will they all go?
I can't speak to that specific situation just because we haven't, I'm not sure we've encountered that, but what I would assume to be what is happening based on this policy is there's going to be conversations with the groups of children who would be affected, with guidance counselors present, and there would be kind of a more community-based decision where instead of it's not just like one day all of a sudden there's someone new in the locker room.
So if the girls, I assume, children talk with each other, and if she and her peers, she might be representing a number of them. And if there's one, you might be able to say, okay, you girl, you can change here. But what if there's 50? Where will they all go if that one transgender student, is then allowed to go into the locker room and change? Where do the 50 other girls go? I know you had said we will come up with a place for them to go. So where will those girls go?
I'm gonna let Superintendent Dias eventually answer this question because I think she'll have better procedural understanding on how this policy actually plays out in the day-to-day.
Thank you, Chair Bayot. First of all, this is probably the safest, most inclusive.
We can't hear you. Could you stand up and speak a little louder, please? Thank you. Yeah, I want you to go on.
This is the safest, most inclusive, caring, and loving student body I have ever encountered in 40-plus years as an educator. They are a reflection of this community. I can't even imagine a scenario where dozens and dozens of children would feel unsafe. If there were a scenario like that, then Principal McKinnon would convene the team. We would consider it a crisis. We would convene our crisis team of clinicians, educators, specialists, classroom teachers, and sometimes community members, and we would figure it out. But Sal, I can't even imagine that happening. We have unisex, individual bathrooms that are safe spaces. We have the nurses' health suite that is a safe space. And kids, for many reasons throughout the years, have used safe spaces like that to change or whatever. And so I can't imagine a scenario where several students would feel unsafe. They're the most caring, the most welcoming children. So I just can't imagine. If we did, we have the right staff and clinicians and specialists.
Justin, yeah, 24 hour contact. So I don't understand that if there's somebody who feels uncomfortable that they're not caring, is that what you're implying? Like,
No.
would this, like this crisis team,
We would have a problem.
would that be like re-education? Is that what we're talking about? Where like, she just needs to be a little bit more educated so that she can feel safe?
Not at all.
I'm just curious how that
Not at all.
works.
We go back to the policy where the outcome would satisfy and keep all kids safe. But we don't have a scenario as opposed to that.
I don't think they had a scenario like that in Loudoun County in 2021 either, where that poor girl was brutalized.
I'm not familiar.
But it happened down in the high school in Loudoun County, Virginia, in 2021. They had an absolutely wonderfully inclusive and diverse group of people, and this individual waltzed into the ladies' room and did unspeakable things to this poor girl there. And nothing like that had ever happened before. And I just don't want to be one of these towns where nothing like that had ever happened before until it happens to one of ours.
I hear your concern, and I totally echo your concern, and I just caution that I think sometimes we hear about those cases because that is the outrageous story, right? The news is very sensationalized nowadays, and we hear that outrageous story, right? But we don't hear the hundreds of thousands of stories of students who are included and are accepted, and because of policies like this, I think that just might, it might make those, not to say that, not to lessen that tragedy, but I think that sometimes we only hear the bad and we don't hear the good. And I just encourage everybody to do further research on the good. And thank you so much for your question.
You get re-educated?
No.
No.
That's all what it sounds like.
Not even close.
That's what it sounds.
It's not even
That's what it sounds
close
like.
here. But
Okay.
I don't know, it's your meeting.
Yeah, I was just gonna hear, I saw a few new hands. I know you've been waiting for a second, so I'm gonna hear from you. Please name and address.
Yes. Penny Walker, Maple Avenue. And I want to tell you, I've been dealing with this issue since before you even knew what this meant. And I think what's missing, what I keep hearing, is the inclusion of the people who have either a family value or a religious value that's different from what we perceive. What you view as open and inclusive, I don't feel you're being open and inclusive to Karen's daughter about how she feels using the bathroom now. I think I don't know why. I applaud your first paragraph, but the second paragraph, when you start and you say some individuals may feel uncomfortable with transgender, I'm telling you from working for 35 years that that's okay. Nobody has to agree with you. But what really upset me was the further reading was school administration and counseling staff are encouraged to work with that individual to address their discomfort. That's right. They may never not have that discomfort, and that is their choice. And you have to let them have that choice. I don't see why that paragraph is even in your description.
Thank you for your comments.
Keep going. That in the 35 years we have come so far. You don't know that because you weren't there. And what I can hope to give you maybe is some wisdom that some people have their own beliefs and they are just as valid as any others.
Thank you for your comments, and I'd like to address that since that was definitely geared towards me and just
It wasn't geared towards anyone.
You said that I have not been around long enough to see these changes, and I appreciate your assumption there. Just so we're all aware, I'm very aware of everybody being allowed to have their own opinions. I champion that. That is why I ran for school committee. That is why I have a degree in political science. So I fully understand why we're here and the value of everybody's input. And I would say I agree with you that it is our place to make sure that everyone is comfortable, and that is exactly what that second paragraph does. And while it is encouraged, that counseling staff work with those individuals. Of course, that individual can deny any such work. That is their right to have their beliefs and to have your beliefs. I believe both this policy,
young children that will not deny when a teacher tells them to do something.
Teachers aren't telling children to do anything. This policy, again, is just simply mandated by the state that we do not discriminate against gender identity and expression.
But you discriminate against people who don't have your same opinion.
We are not. That paragraph, that second paragraph, as I explained, protects the individual who is uncomfortable or does not believe that transgender or other identities is conforming. I believe that it perfectly encapsulates that. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your question, Polly.
Hi, good afternoon. Polly Allen, 104 South of Commons. I use she, her pronouns. I consider myself an ally. I would like to thank you for using more inclusive language on parent permission slips. As someone who you may not consider someone different than you all, I was raised by my great aunt. So going to school here 40 years ago, mother and father on my form really hurt my feelings. I didn't know where my father was, and my great aunt was doing her very best to raise me. And it was kind of offensive that she wasn't given a voice on my forms. So I appreciate that 40-some years later. But also, I appreciate everything that you're doing for gender non-conforming kids and kids of all genders. And at the last meeting, I heard on video a lot of people saying there are two genders, and God says there's two genders. I would just like to bring up that that same great aunt of mine was a Christian. and went to St. Catherine's and considered herself very kind and loving. And kind and loving means accepting of everybody, no matter how they feel, no matter what they believe they are. You might look at them and think they're one thing, and they feel something different inside. And who are you to judge? And I feel if you don't understand that, if you don't have people in your community, in your families, that feel that they are something different than you judge them as, then maybe you should take a look at that. There are some great websites. I would start with the Trevor Project. They will give you great insights on what it's like to be a youth in the LGBT community. They also state that one adult that gives an LGBTQ child some acceptance lowers the suicide rate in that child immensely. Imagine what would happen if the whole community accepted that child. Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't heard from you. Yes. Thank you.
I don't have much information, but I have been hearing that your library has some literature that helps children live a different life than a lot of other children. I say, I don't know your library. It's just what I have hearsay that is showing children differences than other children. And I just wondered, are you mandated by state to have these, or is this a choice of the school committee to bring in these types of books?
Okay. Because I don't know the titles that you're referring to and all of that, I'm gonna say that I can defer that to Superintendent Dias-Mitchell, but I would also just add that in the next couple of months, once we do have this library policy you heard about earlier, there will be a full procedure on how to ask questions regarding just that. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Superintendent?
School libraries, the mission of them is to curate materials that are highly regarded in various review media, like Publishers Weekly or School Library Journal or any other book review source that the publishing industry uses. And this library, like every school library in the country, its collection reflects its community of users and patrons. Its collection reflects realities, different configurations of families, different people. Every single book, every single website that is curated at the Live Finder area of the library, everything has been expertly vetted by a professional. The school committee does not put materials into a school library. The school committee empowers the professionals, in this case, a person with a master's degree in library science, to curate a collection that suits and meets the needs of all children, all families, and in that respect, this library is doing its job. And I've looked at the collection as a former library director, as someone who looked at collections for the master's program at the University of Rhode Island. This has been my life's work. There's nothing in this library that does not belong there. I don't know where that information originated, and it is puzzling to me as someone who promotes literacy and also access to authoritative resources for kids. We want kids to access materials that are selected by a professional librarian, not to go on the web and key in a few terms and come up with horrible, horrible things.
And so the library is the safest place to access materials. It's all been vetted. Our kids are living on iPads starting at 9 months. Our library is much more intentional than, I call it the cesspool of human behavior, social media and the World Wide Web unfettered and not vetted. So you can rest assured that every book in the library has been hand-selected per the library policy. Selection criteria is laid out in the policy, and it's just not willy-nilly. Everything is purchased with your tax dollars and carefully built and also constantly in flux. It's constantly being weeded, outdated materials, outdated encyclopedias. Nowadays, they're outdated the minute they're printed, really. So it is a living, breathing reflection of the needs of the children and the community, and it's absolutely accessible to all kids and reflects any situation that a child could confront within his or their own family, their neighbors, etc. There's wonderful resources in there. There's nothing that would be construed as not being reviewed before purchase.
Thank you, Superintendent. So again, I'm just going to hear from, in the issue of time, I'm just going to hear for new comments. Right here. Yep, Mr. Anderson.
My name is Larry Anderson. I live at Wilbur Road. First of all, I want to thank the committee for your efforts and for this meeting, which at 3:30 in the afternoon actually has attracted quite a few members of the community. I'm recalling that, so this policy, as I read it, is first of all necessary because of the absence of a policy, even if imperfect. We are inviting discrimination. I have to have a policy, whether the state says so or not. It's comprehensive, it's clearly written, it's informative in terms of terminology, so that whether any of us agrees or disagrees with it, we know we have a common place to start from. And I'm reminded of my own son's experience attending this school now 30 years ago, when we didn't have policies like that to this degree of specificity. But what I can tell you is, from my experience, thinking my childhood, students are or can feel different in the school. I'm trying to be careful about the words I use, and not just on matters of gender identity. And so, as a public school, the challenge for all of us, especially for the school committee, the administrators, the faculty, is in a public school, we don't limit, we don't set majority standards. Every student has to be addressed as an individual, which is a really hard thing to do. But I will say that I appreciate that a standard that you include in here is a realistically subjective one, which is comfort, because that means different things to every single student and to every parent. So what this does, this explicit language of this, invites and describes a environment and a process in which everybody, parents, students, teachers, faculty, and others, that we are trying to reach out so that everybody can feel comfortable about expressing their comfort and discomfort, and that just starts a process where people are treated as individuals, and that's a challenge for administrators. You know, you're not getting a bathroom for every single student. You have to deal with the practicalities of implementing the process. So I think this is an excellent policy. Thank you for it.
Thank you for your comments. In the back.
Hi, Maureen Rigo, 16K Down Hill Road. Let's see, it's really hard to know where to start, and I would encourage you, Ellen gave you some protocol for, you know, a kinder kind of meeting. I would encourage you to continue to hold these meetings, because apparently there's great interest, right? And why is there great interest? Why do some parents who I know love children and other parents that I know love children have conflicting thoughts? Good question. So I'm not really sure where to begin. I'm just going to talk because I've learned from others to talk for 3 minutes and then wait for you to. First of all, my friend Karen Boscheman asked that it be recorded that she was not given 3 minutes. And she asked, and there was sort of some noise, so I'm not sure if the recording secretary heard. She wanted it to be recorded. The comment about parents or guardians or great aunts, to love a child is not to affirm them in something that is untruthful. I'm going to say untruthful, and I don't know if that's hate speech, okay? I believe every child is a child of God. I believe all of us have dignity. It's not hard to treat individuals with great respect. It's not. If you know how to treat people well, you can treat children well. There's a social contagion going on right now. 4,400% increase in girls. This used to be, transgenderism used to be a boy thing. It used to be a young male who thought they were a woman. And I've done a ton of research, so to say go and read is not valid for me. I've done a ton of research. And gender-affirming care in the Scandinavian countries is being backtracked. The people that developed gender-affirming care are saying that they were given false information and that the ongoing processes of looking at suicidal children were not carried through. So there's something called the Dutch Protocol, which the Scandinavian countries were following, but it was based on false information. And I encourage people to go and look at that. I applaud you for standing up and saying something. I disagree that this is well written. I think this is going to get the school into trouble someday. It might be a staff member, it might be a teacher, it might be an administrator. Someone is going to make children feel unsafe because, and I've heard you talking about cisgender and everything else, but there's also this thing called gender fluid, right? Okay, so somebody can switch back and forth. And my other...
That was your 3 minutes. Thank you so much, Mrs. Rigo, for your comments.
You're welcome.
Next comment.
Oh, my name's Laura Haverland. I live at 68 Shaw Road in Little Compton. Yeah, I just wanted to express gratitude for living in a town where I think the subcommittee appears to be doing everything by the letter of the law, accommodating students and making sure that they can learn at our school, because that's the priority. You know, if a whole bunch of alien children arrived in our town and needed to be educated, it would be our responsibility to do that. We'd have to change the policy. Like, I don't care what the children are, who they look like, whatever. Our job is to educate them, and I think that the policy subcommittee is doing a great job making good legal language to accommodate everybody. And I think, you know, the school, like, I think, and I believe everything coming out of these meetings seems to affirm that everyone's opinion is valid. Everybody's allowed to believe what they want, religious beliefs or otherwise. And nobody's trying to re-educate anybody or change your values or your religious beliefs. We're just trying to educate the children here. make sure that they feel safe and their needs are taken care of. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you for your comment.
In the back. Me?
Yes.
Hi, Lori Doherty, 115B West Main Road. Do we know what the policy is at the high school, Portsmouth High School? Do they have gender-neutral bathrooms, locker rooms? I have a personal friend whose child is transgender, and they do not feel comfortable going into a locker room or bathroom. They prefer to have the single use. And the policy that I was reading that was passed in 2021, the gender inclusive bathrooms, H5741 and S755. It says for individuals who are transgender or gender non-conforming, the ability to access private and safe bathroom facilities is critical. We supported this legislation, which will require that all newly constructed single-user public bathroom facilities be gender neutral. And I agree with that. I don't agree with multi-use bathrooms, locker rooms. I don't think kids are going to be comfortable. And I have 2 children going to school here.
Thank you. I'm not exactly sure what Portsmouth High School's policy is. I know that they do have something on the books that is a non-discrimination policy, but if you send Jennifer your information, I can find that Portsmouth High School policy and send it your way if you'd like.
Jen, she has my information.
Yeah, okay. Other comments?
I have one question.
Sure.
Justin, Gion, 24 nowhere in this, the restrooms, locker rooms, and changing facility paragraph of the policy, does it really delineate staff from the students? So, is there ever an instance in which you get?
I think I know where you're going with
Yeah.
this. Students and staff never use the same facilities.
Ever. So, okay.
Ever.
Okay.
Yeah, that shouldn't be happening.
So there's no instance in where
No.
down the line, some transgender staff member could potentially.
No. They
Okay.
have their own staff ability, staff bathrooms and things like that.
That's not really, is that not explicitly explained in this policy because it's explained in another policy? Like, is there a?
I can look into that, and I can make sure that if it's in a different policy, it's stated there, but we can definitely, if that's something that is of concern, we can make it clearer that staff and student bathrooms are.
It just keeps saying individuals,
Yeah.
so it kind of leaves something to interpretation.
No, I hear you.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you for your comment.
Yep.
I'm just gonna hear the new one, and then we'll end with Cheyenne, okay?
Hi, Jeremy Allen, 104 South the Commons. And I want to say 30 years ago, there was a little more than that, but I met my wife, and I told my stepfather about my wife, and he's a nice Irish guy, and she looks kind of Irish, but I told her that she was Portuguese. Told him that she was Portuguese, and he told me that if I ever brought a Portuguese baby into his house, he would kill me. We've all grown up since then, and I had to make a choice between that family and this family, which is Little Compton. I love every single person in this room. We have different opinions right now. But I've been listening. I listen to people when I need, so I listen to Jesus all day today. Listen to the gospel. And he's the 3 words that he says the most in the gospels are be not afraid. He says, be not afraid, be not afraid, be not afraid. If you're afraid of a man in tights, and you're a good American, you should be not afraid of a man in tights, like Benjamin Franklin. Okay? If you're afraid of a man with a wig, you should be not afraid, because that's what Jesus would do. You wouldn't be afraid of Thomas Jefferson. If you're afraid of a man with a little rouge on his face, be not afraid. That's what Jesus would do, right? You would not be afraid of George Washington. We all want the same things, but I think we're coming at this from a point of fear. But remember, 30 years ago, my stepfather said, my kids would look like monkeys if I married a Portuguese woman and had Portuguese kids. We've all grown up. We're still moving the ball forward together as my family, Little Compton. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Cheyenne, over Cheyenne.
Alright, so Cheyenne Leon, Temporary North. I heard when you were answering my call, you said that staff and students do not use the same bathroom. That is not correct. I can tell you firsthand that I have seen, I'm not going to name anyone because I don't think that's respectful at all, but I'm going to tell you right now that I have seen female teachers in the student bathrooms of the 8th grade girls use.
Okay.
So I would just like to ask that you please check your information before you tell us, because I personally, and probably everyone else here, would like to know, to make sure that they're hearing the truth and not something twisted to fit your agenda. Thank you.
I appreciate your comment, and I really encourage you to address that with school administration, because that is not supposed to be happening. That is why I made that comment. That's incorrect. So I apologize for misinformation, but do encourage you to speak to Principal McKinnon about that.
Over here.
Just a quick comment. Elizabeth Middleton, 98B Long Highway. I want to thank you. I think the policy is lawful, and I think more importantly, there is nothing that could possibly be more important than to create a space that is safe and equally respectful for every student, regardless of their gender identity, their race, their faith. I really think no child should come in here and feel abnormal or other. We have a great community, we have a wonderful school, and I appreciate everything I know.
Thank you. Just going to take one last comment from the back before moving on to the action items. Just your name and the address for the record.
Sure. My name is Kristen Monas. I live at 208 Long Highway in Little Compton. I came to the meeting just because I was concerned about the mixing of genders in the bathroom. As a mom of 2 teenage girls, I can tell you right now, my children would not feel comfortable being in a gender-neutral bathroom. My daughter does go to the high school, and I know they worked on specific bathrooms over the summer to make sure there was the correct bathrooms or availability for bathrooms. I can't speak to the locker rooms, but that brings up a question I'd like to find out for myself. My children don't even want to change in front of me. That's how awkward they are. Just female, whatever, so that does trouble me a lot, and I can speak for my husband that he would be furious if he knew, even if we know the people, we love the people, whatever, that he would be furious if there was a non-female child in the bathroom with them, and that's my opinion on that. I know because I used to work here, we did use the bathrooms occasionally with the children, and I know the male and female teachers did that quite often because it was easy and it was quick, so that is true. The 8th graders, I think, use the bathroom down near the gymnasium because you guys like to keep the kids kind of separate based on the age ranges, like 7th and 8th, 5, 6, and all that. And bringing that up, the 8th grade bathroom is the public bathroom, which could be used by anybody in the whole school. So adults definitely go in the girls and boys bathroom down near the main office, for sure. I'm also a public school teacher. I worked in 2 middle schools. Neither middle school had, they all had transgender or neutral, whatever you want to call it, bathrooms, but nobody had transgender locker rooms or anything like that. So nobody has had to cross that yet. I don't know if they're working on that or not. But I've also experienced situations with my own children where my child was having to leave an area because someone else was uncomfortable and my child was isolated, having to do with the mask issue. So I'm very sensitive about that, and and my child and another child that I know was forced to be in a separate location because of a mask issue due to medical concerns, which is fine after mask mandates are over. And I don't want any child who feels uncomfortable to then be labeled, and then it became an issue. Kids asked questions, kids bothered them, kids made comments, and it was hard. So I just wanted to bring up that issue for you, that I think it is going to bring up a lot of issues Each scenario, and each family, and each circumstance is going to look very different. And I know for me, I'm not comfortable with the policy as written because I don't know what that means for my child. And when it does, I'm going to be in here making sure my child is not in the bathroom with a biological male. Period.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to action item 4.1. Consider, discuss, and vote to approve the September 20th, 2023 Policy Subcommittee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion? Motion. Second, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, 5.1, consider and vote to adjourn. Do I have a motion? Motion. Second, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you all for coming. I do want to reiterate that we do have these meetings almost monthly, and we have as long as I've been on this committee, which is 3.5 years now. So I encourage you all to come out again to another policy subcommittee meeting for further
Thank you for
discussions.
listening.
Thank you all.
And since I